I want to bring in Mahmoud Mohieldin. He is the UN climate change high-level champion for COP27. That was back in 2022. Also former World Bank Senior Vice President, former Minister of Investment in Egypt. Welcome to the program. We spent a lot of time today thinking about climate in the context of the message that was heard yesterday at the United Nations by, in the message from the President of the United States at the United Nations yesterday. What were you thinking when he called climate change a con job?
Well, I see it around the world, especially in many of the emerging markets, countries of the global south, in Europe, in Latin America. It's moving, progressing, despite the political statements and political hurdles, because it's becoming today more affordable, comparing what you can produce of electricity from renewables compared to fossil fuel. So it makes sense just to compare the cost. So people are progressing towards decarbonization and investing in renewables because it's much more affordable and cost effective.
So the market is making this decision for countries.
Absolutely. And a few weeks back, what gives us hope, based on some interesting big read article from the Financial Times, that what gives us hope is technology, innovation. What we were producing at multiple of costs 10 years ago, each time we try to cite a figure, we get corrected because of the lowering of cost when it comes to electricity. I wouldn't dare saying that about the cost of adaptation. So as you know, climate change had those two wings. The mitigation part, or investing in decarbonization renewables, that's becoming more affordable. But when it comes to adapting countries, societies, and economies to the climate change and its risk, here we need to mobilize more public finance, because the cost return is not really as straightforward when it comes to commercial market basis compared to decarbonization.
Mahmoud, one thing I want to ask you. So there was President Trump, an hour address to the UN General Assembly out there.
I was there. Yeah.
You were there. And some very strong words when it came to climate change. I am curious, when you have conversations with members of the administration, are they as opposed in terms of U.S. strategy, what they talk about U.S. strategy, being opposed or not supportive of policies to stem climate change?
Members of the U.S. administration follow their leader and their
I was
president.
curious if backdoor conversations.
But we see as well some practical, pragmatic statements, like a recent statement that came out comparing investing in renewables in the form of solar versus wind farms. So there was a kind of a statement that tells us, well, you can invest better in solar. And then there is a great deal of investments as well in innovation when it comes to batteries, storage, and all of that. So we see some opportunistic approaches and more pragmatic approaches, but not really to oppose the strong statements coming from their boss.
Can I ask you, in terms of COP this year, I'm just curious how COP will work this year in such an active kind of climate hostility that we see from the United States?
Well,
is that a problem, not having...
Of course it is. For the biggest economy in the world, with the great deal of dynamism, inventions, innovation that could really help not just the United States, but the rest of the world, we are missing a lot. But having said that, two things. Finance for Development Conference in Seville that took place a few weeks ago. Right. It was fantastic. It was successful. It delivered. It was all the world minus one. So that gives hope. The second thing, the preparation for COP30, when I was in Rio and their Climate Action Week, great deal of dynamics, participation, not just at the leaders level, but community, private sector, civil society. So it is happening. So again, the world minus one.
You've spent a lot of time thinking about emerging and developing economies.
Yeah.
And here in the U.S., with the dismantling of USAID, with the pullback in foreign aid, this narrative has seemed to emerge, which is basically like, why should we be sending money to countries outside of the United States when there are people here in the U.S. that need that money? What would you say to that?
Well, there is an evolution of thinking. At the beginning of start of the aid, there was the issue of consideration of others, and there is some sort of altruistic behavior that we need to help the rest of the world, the countries, the rich economies. And there was some elements as well of compensation, especially from the colonial powers that, we exploited the resources of these poor countries, so let's help them. And then it came as well issues related, let's do the help, because we will benefit more even if a kind of self-interest will like stability, we like bigger markets, we like people to follow the same kind of standards, and we need to eliminate forced migration. So there was a kind of mix of ideas between positive and negative. But then we are in a new world now, and I think it's very much the end of official development assistance as we know it.
You do?
Yes, of course. Not just from USAID and its disappearance suddenly, but actually from other sources as well.
So what does the world look like, particularly the developing world, in this new era?
It depends really where you are addressing the issue. There are many countries, including my brothers. I'm an African, I'm an Egyptian. My brothers from South Sudan, for instance, or Burundi, they are more dependent on external help and support when it comes to their budgets. Other countries would use aid as a kind of catalytic help to help in bringing the private sector, elements of innovation, blended finance, so they will survive without aid. But other countries that are more dependent, especially in humanitarian work, human development, they need really to get new sources, including from philanthropies.
Would you argue that there is a soft power element still to this as well, that there is a benefit for, and look, I think this was an example used in a New York Times article months ago.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Like, you know, a bag of rice shows up, it has an American flag on it.
Yeah.
Somebody in some far-flung place sees that and says, I have a different view of America and an American as a result of this.
It helped promoting American values, American culture, so that was positive to the United States in this case. But you can really see aid in different ways as well. From the recipient countries, if aid is basically prioritizing what the nationals and the communities are pushing for and hoping for, this is a good thing. If it is a catalyst for transformation, it's a great thing. But if it is crowding out public finance, if it is crowding out private sector, then you have other considerations. So there could be some sort of blessings in disguise when we are addressing these kind of changes.
China has been in the past certainly very aggressive when it comes to providing funding, especially for the developing world. And I just do wonder, in an absence of other developed nations helping out the developing world, does China step up its efforts? Is that a problem?
Yeah, it's like the old rules of nature and physics. When there is a gap, there will be a vacuum. You'll find somebody trying to help you. We see the role of China is rising, the role of many of the middle powers rising, the role of regional powers is rising as well. So, and the role of foundations, philanthropies, not just the big names that we are familiar with, but some of the smaller ones coming from the regions. And this comes associated with benefits, including soft power, the issue that you mentioned. Or you cannot really draw a line now between what's aid and what's promotion for investment or promotion for exports. So there will be some serious spillovers given this kind of sudden cut.
Is the money getting to the emerging world that needs it, in terms of certainly when it comes to climate initiatives where they are so vulnerable?
No. The development finance system and the climate finance system, I described it before when we were preparing for COP27 and after that, has been insufficient because there is a widening gap, inefficient because it takes forever until you mobilize funds, and unfair because of cost. And we still suffer from the same problems now. Well, perhaps better public-private partnerships with the support of philanthropies, we can mobilize funds in a better way.
Mahmoud, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate
Thank you so
it.
much
Good to
for
see
having
you.
me. Thank you.
Mahmoud Mohieldin, UN Climate Change High-Level Champion for COP27. That was back in 2022. Also former World Bank Senior Vice President, former Minister of Investment in Egypt.